not based on the PMBOK guide. It is based on 13 references, one of which is the PMBOK guide. One is the program guide. One is the Agile practice guide. So, but just because we're coming out with a 7th edition, it doesn't have any impact on the PMP exam.
Anand just cleared PMP like 10 minutes ago. Ali have cleared PMP with above target. Congratulations, Raheel, on clearing your PMP in first attempt. You cleared PMP exam with 5 above target. The best thing that anyone can do. 5 above target. Ladies and gentlemen, second student in 3 days, 5 above target.
I didn't expect it that I will get this result. I thought that I will be like target or like above target.
Thanks to you. Without your dedication and guidance, it was impossible for me.
Yeah, we can play to you. Above target, above target, above target, above target. Do I have to write PMBOK? Do I have said no? Like whenever he heard like this guy have read 5 times PMBOK so many times, you always get confused and come back to me. I kept on saying him, you are going to clear, just read 1 time. And that's what he did. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of a web episode. This one is very special and I was actually wanting to do this from long time. I wanted someone who has in-depth experience and knowledge of not just project management professional but as a whole of project. So finally we have Greta Blash. Greta Blash basically say herself to as an experienced servant leader, and I'm a testimony of that. Yes, my friends, she is a servant leader. If you want to know about what is servant leader, just go and talk to Greta Blash, and you will understand what is a servant leader. She is self-directed, very disciplined, but flexible, confident, and ready to help any team who faces challenges. She has experience of over 30 years in the field of business analyst, project management, program management, but yet she is very accessible. If you just message her on LinkedIn, and Greta, I still remember that's how we started talking. She will reply within the reasonable time. And that is one of the reason she is still among the top trainers with all the digitals and all those things. She is still among the top trainers of project management professional, discipline agile scrum master, discipline agile senior scrum master. I actually did both discipline agile scrum master and discipline agile senior scrum master in less than 2 weeks difference, and she was actually responsible for doing that. Like I really loved the email she gave me. Like when you are going to do DSSM, and the last line was no worry, take easy. But the push was always there. She actually pushed me to do it, and without her continuous guidance, it would have been impossible for me to do DASM and DSSM in such a short period. She is authorized training provider of PMP and Discipline Agile. She managed facilitated method, a very good company for all kind of training. So let's hear her life story, how she did all those things. And I am gonna say it, I have never said this. This one is going to be legendary for everyone who's gonna learn about project management. Thank you, Greta, and thank you for your time that you have blessed us for coming here.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be able to work with you and get to know you personally. It's been a real pleasure. Actually, so you made the comment, I've been doing this for so many years. So let me go way, way back in time. I actually was a math major in college. Because we didn't have computer science classes at the time, I basically had to learn programming to support my different classes. So I went everywhere from assembler language to Octal to Fortran, etc., depending on what the class was. So after I graduated from college, I ended up starting teaching actually high school math. And I was lucky in a way because I was teaching what they considered the slow kid program, the programs where the kids weren't quite up to speed. But because of that, I had a computer in my actual classroom. And so I had the ability to let kids come in and play math games on the computer back then. So my husband had been working for an insurance company. He got promoted back to the home office. So I had to give up the teaching and I went with him. And they ended up hiring me in to kind of supposedly teach and do training. But then they found out that, hey, she kind of knows the insurance business because of being around him. And so they put me on a project as kind of an analyst programmer to help put this new program in or application in for system in for the insurance people out in the field. And then we had this ERISA, which was this new federal program coming in as far as actuarial and retirement and everything. And so they said, well, wait, she knows math. She also knows Fortran. So let's bring her over. And I got certified in 3 of those actuarial exams, which who knows now, but that gave me a chance to kind of take my programming and my analyst and understand what's going on. From there, I just kind of started moving more into the data aspect of the analysis. I was always interested in what information was needed. And as a result, I did a lot of database design. I actually designed a database to keep track of all the charges for open heart surgery, because a lot of those sutures they use are very expensive. And of course, kind of goes with the job, but I spent 6 weeks in the operating room watching open heart surgery, because part of what I had to figure out is how can we capture that cost without interrupting the surgery. So looking at a lot of those things where you start playing those roles. But that went into data warehouses, into business intelligence, etc. But in most of the projects, I started taking more of a lead role, not necessarily being called the project manager. And that wasn't really what I wanted to do. But as you start understanding what a project is, then you do start to manage some of those different projects. But I think my business analysis training and my love of just questioning all the time was what helped me go in and work on and manage projects. I mentioned the open heart surgery. I did a cruise missile project. I did a lot tracking of Pringles potato chips and Duncan Hines brownie mixes. I did a CRM program that had to do with the guests at a casino in Las Vegas, as well as in law enforcement, and then a big online retailer. So because of the combination of kind of the leadership as well as the analysis, I could kind of move from one to the other. And I think because of that ability to manage so many diverse projects, but realistically, they're all the same. You still have to figure out what it is needs to be done, and you have to figure out how best that's going to work with the individuals so that you make sure. My favorite saying always is, I look at the as is, I understand where the to be, that vision of where we're trying to go, but I absolutely want to make sure that we don't go back to the as was. So if we spend all this time, we make sure that what we deliver and what we support, especially in change management, because that's so critical, making sure that what we put in place actually sticks, provides the benefit that it's supposed to provide, and that it's sustainable as we go through. And that's one of the big things I like about Discipline Agile, because Discipline Agile talks about a sustainable consumable results, something that the end user is going to want, it's going to meet their expectation, and they're going to use it. Because if we just do it and it never gets used, we've wasted a lot of time and money. So now what I'm doing is basically teaching. I do some consulting. In fact, I'm doing a project PMO consult right now to try to take a fairly kind of medium-sized organization and put a little bit of structure around it, but not too much structure. So once again, understanding the rigors that could go into project management, and yet taking that more discipline agile approach of what's needed based on the context of the project itself. You mentioned kind of the servant leadership. For the last few years, I've kind of called myself not a project manager, but an engagement manager. Because what I look at is engaging the team, the stakeholders, what's going on. When I started out years ago, and my daughters would ask, "So, Mom, what do you really do?" And I said, "I translate. I translate between the business and what they call something and the computer people because they have their own language." And I think that's where I still am. When we talk about projects today, unfortunately, we can't be face to face at a whiteboard to discuss things, but we sure can do it with a whiteboard on an internet type of thing. But trying to see how important it is to understand what the business person, the stakeholder, the customer is asking for, and how are we going to deliver that so it meets their needs. Now, when we go back and talk about training, one of the things that I pride myself on is because I have such a variety of experience. I can teach the PMP. Oh, I can probably teach it without any slides or anything. In fact, I have a couple of times when somebody said, "Hey, can you kind of explain project management to us?" And I went up to the board and I started doing a whiteboard of it because I know it, but I also understand what's important. And I think that comes with experience. And it comes with experience of not just being a project manager, but having been an analyst, having done risk management, having looked at programs and how you work with strategic planning and alignment. And I think that's one of the things that when you start looking at taking any sort of training, and especially the PMP, if you're taking it from somebody who doesn't know Agile, who hasn't done it, not just knows it, but actually experienced, tried to figure out how are you going to take Agile concepts into a construction project? Well, there are a lot of ways you can, because a lot of the things construction people do are Agile. We just call it something different. But if you don't have that experience, I don't think you really learn. You're just memorizing words. And even when I was teaching graduate school, what everybody liked about the fact was when I would come in on a Thursday night to teach, I could use what I had been doing during the week on a project and apply that to what I was teaching real time. That's something that only experienced project managers really can do. And that's where, when you start looking at these training programs, and I think that the fact of the vetting that PMI does to make sure that if you're an authorized training partner, you have the experience, you've been in business, you know what you're doing. You're not just one area, but you've got a lot of different approaches to use.
I totally.
That kind of makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. That's why, like, I really like the way you start, especially in DSM training when we were having. You gave your examples of casinos, how casinos are operating, and you actually explained one of your examples, how not knowing the proper risk management, how much this can damage. gave one example of compliance about using credit cards. You cannot actually driving license. You cannot use them in some states, but you can check them from other state. So that is basically something that comes from practical experience. And if you don't put practical experience in any kind of training, then it becomes more difficult. Greta, I would like to talk about something about PMP. Since PMP has become for last, I would say last 10 to 15 years as a gold standard of certification. Even
Right.
I see a lot of jobs that are coming, they are making it as a prerequisite. So when you did PMP and how you became involved in PMP, since you are teaching PMP more than even me, like you have so much batch going on. So how you got involved in that?
Well, actually, it's funny because I had 15 years experience as a project manager before I did my PMP because I just really thought that it was more important to have experience than letters after your name. And maybe that's why I'm a little negative right now when I see companies that say they want a PMP, 1 year experience. Well, according to the certification requirements, you're supposed to have at least 2 years or 36 months leading a project, not performing, not being on a project, but actually leading it, being in charge. I don't think that's caught. And obviously, I don't think it's really PMI's job to kind of police who's applying. If those requirements say that you need to have that experience and you've signed the code of ethics saying you're being honest, you should not be doing a PMP until you have the experience. And unfortunately, too many times, not as much right now because I'm not back consulting as much, but when I was, people would come up to me and say, you know what? I think you're the first PMP who knows how to manage your way out of a wet paper bag because so many people had the PMP, but they have no clue how to do anything. And I think now, because the exam has changed and it's situational, you can't memorize 49 processes and 10 knowledge areas and 5 process groups and what, 1,200 ETOs? That's not going to help you because the new questions that are situational, you have to understand based on the situation what you would use, meaning you need to know what those 4 different options are. And I have been working very closely for the last 3 months with PMI to make changes to the training material. Also, the 200 questions that PMI provides to the premier ATPs, which are most of which were actually written by the same people who wrote the PMP questions. It was just these are not questions that were accepted, either because they were duplicates or too close or whatever. But I've been working with them to really beef up that program and make the modifications to it. As part, there's only 6 of us that were selected by PMI to do this, and yeah, it's a lot of time that we've volunteered to help make the PMP back into that gold standard. But I just wish people would understand, and companies, organizations would understand that if somebody has a PMP, it really says you not only know project management, but you have experience and you know where things are happening. I mean, when I got it, truthfully, I got the PMP. I told my CIO at the time, hey, I passed and I'm now a PMP. And he says, so are you a better project manager now? And I said, no, I still know where all those landmines are. I know where I need to be prepared for things to go wrong. And maybe, yes, I'm that person that always is the glass half empty because I'm looking for what might happen, being preventative and proactive. So it's an interesting way.
For you, for you, I wouldn't use the terminology of glass half empty. Uh, I would say just like this guy, Steve Jobs, who did it all the revolution you are doing for project management, you are more of a perfectionist. It's not glass half full. The way I am working very closely with you, the work you do is not glass half empty. You always see the corners that can further improve. And I would say that's more of a perfectionist, and we do need that in all kind of certifications so that we can improve the way you are working. And I see that it has to be this way for those people who are working and who are improving. If they cannot improve those things, then the people who are going to give the exam, they're like, if today PMP is on gold standard, after 10 years, it will not be on the gold standards. Because
Right.
as you are saying, I really am in love with the new PMP exam. When people ask me, is this a easy exam or hard exam? I'll tell my answer later. What do you think about this new PMP? Comparing with 2020, is this the hard one or easy one?
It depends. If you have the experience, it's easy. But
Yep.
if you don't have the experience, it's impossible
Yes.
because you don't know what to think about. I mean, it's not saying what input would you use for doing communication plan. No, it's talking about where you have communication difficulties and what would you look at. Well, it depends on where I am in the project too. Am I at the beginning? Am I at the middle? Am I towards the end? Those are all those things that you have to take into account and kind of drop yourself into that situation so that you can answer it. Now, I also think that one of the other things that is so overlooked, we've got at PMI tons of practice guides. They are excellent. The business analysis that talks about how you do your needs assessment and you elicit requirements rather than just going around and picking them up and collecting them. There's a managing change that talks about change or management that is excellent. There's one on governance. There's one on the program management alone. Even if you are not managing a program, some of the concepts that are in that program management standard are so good. And actually, it's readable. It's more what the seventh edition is going to look like. It's not this format where you have processes and all this stuff around it. It's talking about the principles and the understanding. And I think I'm not so sure having a bunch of certifications is as important as having the knowledge that goes along with that certification. One of the ones I'm looking at right now and working on is a change management. Now, there is a certification. I'm not sure that the certification in that case really is that much better for me. Same thing with risk management. We've talked about that. I know it, I teach it. I don't have that certification because I don't have the experience specifically being a risk manager. I've done it as part of everything else, but not full time. But what I learned from studying it is just what I add to the rest. So it's you've just got to continue to add more to what you're doing.
That's so true. That's so true. Now you mentioned something about seventh edition. I actually have a lot of questions coming from the student that they said you need to ask to Greta about seventh edition. We can actually do a complete video on that just on seventh edition. So apart from that, the seventh edition is coming on 1st of August that the PMI has given.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah, sure.
It's
So
tied up because it's an ANSI standard.
yeah,
Okay. So it's past PMI's control right now. It's in the ANSI world.
yeah. So it's more of a this is going to change the entire PMP world. Like all the people who have gone through PMP 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they are always looking for that magical grid of knowledge areas and process group. So there will
They're
be
gone.
no that's gone. So what are the
They're
good
gone.
you have seen under the hood of seventh edition? So what are the good things and what are the bad things you in your opinion about seventh edition?
Well, I think the good thing, it goes back very similar to the program management standard in that it talks about the domains that have to do with things that you do, principles and practices, not trying to tell you how to do it and what deliverable. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to get rid of the stakeholder register and the risk register. Yes, those are still going to be there. But you don't worry about all the things that you would use to create it. You're talking about what's its purpose? What is the value of it? Now, some of it, which is interesting, once again, and I have to say this because I'm told by PMI every time we have our meeting, please remind people the exam is not based on the PMBOK guide. It is based on 13 references, one of which is the PMBOK guide. One is the program guide. One is the Agile practice guide. So, but just because we're coming out with a 7th edition, it doesn't have any impact on the PMP exam. The PMP
Actually, you just answered my next question. Thank you.
No, there is no whatsoever impact on it. The exam changes every 3 to 4 years based on a study that PMI does with organizations all over the world as to this role delineation study. What kind of expertise and things does a project manager need? Now, the PMBOK guide, because it does have this ANSI, American National Standards Institute, attached to it, that must be updated every 3 years. That's standard. So that is what is making it the 3-year cycle for the PMBOK guide. But once again, when the 7th edition comes out, it's got the ANSI standard, and then it has the body of knowledge. And those are 2 different sections. And actually, the 6th edition has it too. The front part is the body of knowledge, and the back part is a standard. Very similar, but not there. Now, the other thing that happened when we moved to the 7th, or as we're moving to the 7th, is they have this Standards Plus platform now. So if you want to go back to the stakeholder register, you want to understand about the stakeholder register, that's where you go. It's explained, it talks about how it is created, what you would use to do it, how you would maintain it. All of that goes into this Standards Plus platform, not into the PMBOK guide or the standard, project management standard.
Can you further explain this standard plus thing? Because what I am understanding from this, we will have a PMBOK, and if we, let's say, we talk about stakeholder register and we want to know about in detail, in addition to PMI org, we have a standard plus as a platform. If you are a PMI member, I guess you can go there and you can look that into detail so that you can understand. But exam, again, as Greta said, exam is not going to change. And Greta, you don't know how much I'm gonna use this thing, because I have been saying this thing to, so I think I have said it to more than 20,000 people, that exam is based on, I haven't used the word our role delineation study. I was using more of exam content outline. The exam is not
That's right.
exam is not based on PMBOK. It has never been based on PMBOK. It is based on exam content outline, and that has already been changed on 2nd of January, and it is implemented. So nothing is going to change for that. Thank you
No.
for that thing. I'm going to actually extract this part and put it there so that people can first learn this thing. That is a very important thing.
Yeah.
Greta,
And I do the same thing. Every time I see somebody post anything on LinkedIn or Facebook, it's like, no, it is not based on the 7th edition or the 6th edition. It is based on project management in general. And actually, even if you go back to the 4th and 5th edition, the PMP at that time had all this additional resource management information, the motivation theories, the quality gurus. Those weren't in the PMBOK guide, and they've always been on the exam. So it's not anything new. It's just that, so many people tried to memorize that page 25 out of the 6th edition. And if you watch me do a couple of presentations in the past, I would take a printout of that page 25 and I'd ask people, so did you memorize this? Yeah, we had to come up with an acronym for all those knowledge areas. And I would rip that apart and throw it up in the air because it's useless. It
Yeah,
has nothing to do with it.
it's more of a that you need to understand the flow, why those things are there,
Right.
how those things put it in the side. Okay, Greta, I'm just gonna put it something there. Greta has a notes and Greta shared that notes with me. Everyone can download those notes from Amazon.com. Greta, can you share about because those book, Greta, those notes are yeah, Greta's note to ace the PMP. So how this can help students because now with the 7th edition they need more material to study to understand the context and you have been involved deeply in making questions or I would say in reviewing everything about the PMP. So how your notes can help to those students?
Well, obviously, it's always a continuous improvement. So now that I've been teaching some of the new material, I need to make a little bit of changes here. But what I really was doing was trying to go back and say, these are the various inputs and outputs commonly used. So what are they and why would you use them? Talking about some of the trends that we have that we're doing. So I just kind of summarized it. Part of it too, it is still from the process standpoint when we get into that part, because I mean, it's still 50% of the exam.
Sure.
So when you start talking about the scope and the schedule and the cost and quality, there's certain key things you need to know. You don't need to read the whole thing as far as the PMBOK guide. And so what I did was based on my students kept saying, why don't you take that slide from the presentation and this slide and put it into a book because you've summarized what it is all about. And so that's what I really did. Now, like I said, I probably will update a little bit more because one of the things I didn't catch, and I don't think anybody who's not an ATP is going to catch this, how strong the whole compliance and governance has become. It is not in the PMBOK guide any place. And yet I'm getting the feedback that the maybe 5 or 6 questions on the exam about compliance. So obviously that's an area I need to beef up in my book too. So, it just, I'm, if you were, well, because I send you updated slides all the time to work with you, I change my slides all the time. I'm teaching it, I find something that doesn't work or somebody asks a question and I need to add another bullet in there. It's a continuous improvement that I do. So
That's important. We need to do continuous improvement on our material. Okay, Greta, you talked about ATP. So a lot of people are taking training from non-ATPs, and people are taking also training from websites like Udemy and other things. So what are the negative points or positive point of the not taking training from ATP?
the negative from taking it from an ATP or not
You
taking it?
can go on both sides. You can go.
Well, okay. So as an ATP, we are provided additional information from PMI. We're provided the training material that is exactly aligned with the exam content outline. We're provided the extra questions and things, extra support, not to mention the fact that if you are taking the class from an authorized trainer that is part of an ATP, that authorized trainer had to go through training also. There was a 2-day training that all the trainers have to go through so that we understand better how to train, especially in a virtual environment, how to train the new material, etc. So that's what an ATP instructor or an ATP comes and provides. Constant every month as an ATP, I receive new material from PMI, depending on whether it's on Discipline Agile or PMP, etc. So we're continually being given additional information. Plus, we work as a team to help each other identify areas where, we need some additional questions or support. That is not there when you're talking about non-ATP. They're old. Their material's not up to date. Now, they may say they adjusted it for the exam content outline, but I don't think a lot of folks are able to pick up those little things like that compliance. And so you basically are getting what you're paying for. And I hate to say it, but I've always had a problem with people going out to the internet to try and find sample questions. And they'll come to me and say, "Here, Greta, I found this set of questions and they were free." And I go through, and I probably don't have to go through more than 10 questions until I find either one that's old and not applicable anymore, or it's just wrong. And that's the difference, is that when you're getting the questions and the training from an ATP, you're getting the most current information from PMI. You're getting the correct answers based on what the exam is going to be asking for, rather than somebody that's just doing it on their own. And believe me, I mean, I have other training companies come and ask me to train, and I did for a while, but I got so fed up because their materials is just wrong. They're just, somebody's just reading the book and copying out of it. And then as a trainer, the key becomes, what do you say? And I know one of the things that we did with this update to the training material we're finalizing right now is we took a lot off the slides. So there aren't as many bullets. So you can't have an instructor just read the slides to you. The instructor has got to teach. The instructor has got to explain what this is about. And there's no instructor guide. And we chose not to do it because the idea was, if you don't have the experience, you shouldn't be teaching it. And that's where your non-ATP instructors are going to really have a hard time. They're just going to follow whatever. They follow the 6th edition. It's not valid anymore. They follow the 7th edition. It has nothing to do with the exam. The exam content outline, they really would have to go through and just take each item on the exam content outline and create material for it. And it's their best guess. That's not going to pass the
That
exam.
was an awesome answer to end this ATP and non-ATP thing. So you have been very generous, and I am moving above the time. So last question, Greta, what do you see for people who are young, like 3 to 5 year experience in entering in the project management world, entire world? Where do you see the world, where they are moving? Like, will in like next 10 or 20 years, discipline agile will be the future, or PMP will be the thing, or you see change management will be moving ahead with this digital revolution? Because you have been there for a long time. Like, I would have to say, I'm not even old enough to match your experience, to put it in plain words, to match your project management experience. But I have seen in my life, from Motorola to like UB Q3 keyboards to this iPhone, we have moved very far in the technology. And it will, like 5G is coming very soon. Elon Musk wants to land us on the Mars and all those things. So what do you think? How people can secure their job? How people can secure about themselves? Where do you see the world in 2030 maybe?
Oh, wow. I mean, I have to go back. When you're talking about that, I started with paper tape on a computer. Okay, that really ages me. But, I mean, the thing is first of all, I have changed with all of this new technology. I have not fought it. I have embraced it and looked at it Now, granted, sometimes I don't take on to it as quickly as maybe, I spend a little bit more time looking at it. But where we're going, I don't think we know. But I do know that what's never going to change is the human relationships. Okay. So even the robotics, the artificial intelligence, I know that's coming, not coming, it's here. And I actually did a robotics project probably 15 years ago. But what I had to do was use my analysis skills to train the robot. So those type of skills are still going to be there. You're still going to have projects, even if they are artificial intelligence. Somebody's got to understand what needs to be done, how you're going to do it, making sure it gets done. And whomever is working on it is going to have to be empowered to make those decisions as we go through. So I have no clue where it's going to go. I just know that the more that we understand about what's happening and questioning it and trying to figure out how it fits in, the better off we're going to be. I just think, I remember years ago where I was working with some individuals who, well, actually, they were wiring boards instead of programming back then, and they couldn't change. So obviously they weren't around very long. So you have to see what's coming, and you have to always kind of look at it and figure out how you can embrace it and add it to what you already are doing. So
So
it's an adding to it.
if I can put it as a final tagline, three skills for the future: adaptability, emotional intelligence, and communication skills. That's it.
Yep.
Thank you.
I,
Thank you,
I
Greta.
might I might add to that just the analytical,
And
being a little bit more analytical, asking, and because the thing is we're not going to be able to change unless we can realize that there's that resistance to the change. And whenever anybody says, well, but this is how we've always done it in the past, that should be an automatic flag to say, blow it up and
Lord,
just try something new. But I think asking and being a little bit more questioning and analytical and understanding more specifically of what you're talking about. But yeah, being able to take that then and adapt and change as we go through. Communicate, that emotional intelligence has to do with working with people. And we've got to understand better. And I don't care whether it's on a project or in real life. If we remove a lot of our kind of noise around people, people are people. I mean, I've worked with people from all over the world. We're all human beings. We all have the same basic values. We may practice a little differently, but we still have the same ideals. And if we get rid of all of those other areas, we're just people. And that's where we get the emotional intelligence, understanding each other.
that's so true. Thank you, Greta, and thank you very much time. I asked for 30 minutes, and I think we have crossed 40 plus minutes. Thank you very much. You have been very generous with it. And I hope maybe when seventh edition come or in the near future, we can do the same thing. You can share your knowledge with my audience, because with you sharing, we have a big audience, because my audience come mostly from Asia and Middle East, and your audience comes mostly from US, Canada, Europe. So when we do this thing, it covers the entire globe, and that's the beauty of today's digital area. Thank you,
That's
Greta.
right.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.